Hi, I'm Nancy Belcher, and I am the CEO for Winona. I have a PhD in biochemistry and spent a lot of years looking at thyroid hormones, metabolism, and weight gain. And then I moved on in my postdoc to molecular biology and genetics and spent about 10 years as a biology professor. Now I work on Winona and also have another job where I work directly with physicians on healthcare policy work. And that's how I really got started with Winona, was the policy behind making hormones available to women. And that was sort of the beginning of Winona, getting women the healthcare they deserved.
Those of you who are already patients have seen my name on your prescription bottle. So I am the Chief Medical Officer, but also right now the prescribing physician. I am a board certified OBGYN. I've been out of residency for 22 years, so I've been doing this for a little while. I also did a family practice residency before I did my OB residency. So I was double boarded in family practice and OBGYN. But in my family practice residency, I really fell in love with women's health. I love delivering babies and doing surgery and helping women. So I did a whole second residency so that I could do that well. I did my undergrad at Berkeley, medical school, St. Louis University, and then residency, family practice at Ventura County Medical Center and OB in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so currently I'm spending a lot of time with you guys, trying to educate and make sure that everybody's comfortable with what I'm prescribing, and then trying to help you guys feel better. And it's really been exciting. It's a lot of fun to do this. So we're hoping to answer questions and educate and take some of the mystique and the scariness out of hormone replacement therapy, because it really is extremely safe. And there's just so much misinformation out there, out on the internet. Like everything else, that it's nice to, be able to speak to you as an OBGYN, and Nancy as a a PhD scientist, to give you the real scoop. When patients are screened correctly, is extremely safe. There are certain conditions where it's not safe, and so the screening questionnaire is really designed to weed out people in which HRT would be unsafe. So if you get past the screening questions, then we know that hormone replacement therapy will be safe for you. Some of the big things that people worry about are cardiovascular risks and cancer. The cardiovascular risk thing is interesting. If you start hormone replacement therapy before you're 60 years of age, it's actually protective against heart disease and stroke. And so that's one of the big things, is we make sure that that's safe. And so if you're under 60, your chance of having a heart attack or other cardiovascular problem, if you're on hormone therapy, is actually less than those that don't start hormone therapy at all. So that risk, again, is very age dependent. The other one that everybody asks about is breast cancer. And, that's really more nuanced. And if there's all kinds of different studies that maybe there's a slight increased risk, and maybe there's no really increased risk at all. But if there is a risk, it's very small. The problem is that there was a big study that came out, quite a while ago, that when the first sort of preliminary results came out and made big headlines saying, "Oh, this is going to give you breast cancer," and it just wasn't true. There was maybe a slight increased risk, and in some of the forms of hormone therapy, there wasn't any risk at all. And so the risk of breast cancer is, if at all, is very, very small. If you look overall, if you start hormone replacement therapy, if you're one of these people that pass through the screening and don't have underlying problems that we would worry about, and you're an appropriate candidate, then people that are on hormone therapy have a longer life expectancy than people that aren't on hormone therapy. Because even if there is a slight increased risk of breast cancer, there's decreased risks of uterine cancer and colon cancer and other bad things that can happen to you, particularly cardiovascular issues. So that overall, you're much more likely to live longer if you're on hormone therapy than if you're not on it. And even more importantly, in my opinion, is your life is better. So not only do you live longer and healthier, but you live happier and feel better. So unfortunately, like I said, there's these kind of crazy things on the internet, but the science really says that for an appropriately screened candidate, this is a very safe thing.
In the studies that were released in 2002, that was using a form of hormone therapy that we do not use. So we use bioidentical hormones, and those are from yams. And bioidentical hormones are identical to the hormones that your ovaries would naturally be producing when you were younger. So we're replacing the hormones identically to the hormones that you're losing with menopause. And so you're not getting too much of the hormone, we're just getting it balanced back to where it was at your ideal point. The other thing, the research has shown that even women that have been diagnosed with breast cancer have a greater likelihood of dying of cardiovascular disease than they do of breast cancer. So, cardiovascular disease is the number one killer of women over breast cancer or any other form of cancer. And we know that HRT, hormone replacement therapy, decreases the likelihood of cardiovascular disease, heart problems. And so, for that reason, in and of itself, HRT is really part of the reason why women are living longer and better than they would without HRT.
We do have compounded creams, and we have just an amazing compounding pharmacy. Our pharmacists they blow my mind how smart they are, and how up to date, and they can quote the literature, and they know what they're doing. The compounded medications by definition are not, quote, FDA approved, but they're use FDA approved ingredients. And there is definitely a lot of oversight as well. The pills and patches are all FDA approved. So everything that we use is basically FDA approved or supervised. So this is real medicine. This is not, some herbs we're picking in the garden and selling them. We're really using medications. That's why we have real physicians, and we have to go through all the legal scrutiny with the correct pharmaceuticals, making sure that we're authorized to bring medications into the state, that we have physicians that are licensed in the state. This is no different than going to your doctor's office, except that you get to do it from the comfort of your home.
And the only thing I think I would add with that is, because of the compounded hormones being mixed in our pharmacies, we can't say that they're FDA approved. They start with the FDA approved reagents or chemicals, the beginning. And then because they're mixed and we don't have an FDA person standing over their shoulder making sure that they're mixing it exactly appropriately, the FDA kind of drew the line there and said, we can't approve it even though we're mixing FDA approved materials. So the materials we start with are FDA approved, but because we're mixing them in a beaker in a lab, then they can't say that. So that's the little caveat there.
If you look at the literature, there was just an article last year published in the New England Journal of Medicine saying that you don't need hormone levels to prescribe hormone replacement therapy. This article is basically saying, stop doing that. You're wasting money, you're wasting resources. You don't need that. Hormone replacement therapy is the best test is the patient. Your body is very sensitive, and it'll tell us, how you're doing. And so hormone replacement therapy is well, whether you need it and how much you need is really diagnosed and based on symptoms. And so the idea is, we look at these cluster of symptoms. It's really pattern recognition. This is something, like I said, I've been doing for 22 years. Gotten pretty good at figuring out the right dose for most people. I like to start with sort of the smallest dose that I think will be effective. And sometimes after a little while, we realize, maybe we need to inch up on the dose a bit, which is the safest way to do it. And so the idea is to give you the dose that we think is going to work. If it's not working, then we go up a little bit more and we let your body tell us when the dose is correct. Unfortunately, I was actually just talking to my wife about this. There are companies that have popped up. There's some billion-dollar companies out there that are lab companies that love to sell you lab tests on the internet. They've sort of advertised and taught people that lab work is important for all these things. And for this, lab work really isn't important, and it's not necessarily part of the evaluation for hormone replacement therapy. It's a marketing plan to sell more lab work. I don't know if you all remember, maybe 10 years ago, they used to advertise these whole body scans. You don't hear those advertised so much anymore. But the idea was that we'd put you in the scanner, we'd scan you from head to toe, we'd find all these things that you don't know are there, so that we could potentially save your life for something that you didn't know was there. And it turned out that people that did the whole body scans actually had a lot more problems. They had more surgery, they had more complications, and they had lower life expectancy because they were getting surgeries they didn't need for these things that were showing up on the scans. And unfortunately, the lab test is sort of the newest thing like that. But we can test all this stuff, but none of it's really important. And really the important thing is, how do you feel? And can we get you feeling better? and we can figure out how much you need by how you feel. And that's really the right way to do it.
A mouth swab or a blood test is a snapshot in time. And just like with our monthly periods, some weeks we had really high estrogen and had an insatiable appetite. And then the next week, we got our period and things sort of leveled out. And so it's just like that monthly cycle where they're going up and down and all over the place. And so with symptoms, Mike is able to see sort of a holistic approach of what's going on rather than this snapshot in time that just cost you $300 or 400. I saw 400.
So that's a really good question. And the answer is a little complicated. It's actually a spectrum. Everybody is different, and so it's hard to predict. Some of the symptoms, hot flashes, for instance, they tend to go away pretty quickly, or at least get better pretty quickly within a few weeks of starting the medications. And so those are usually, hot flashes, night sweats, even some sleep problems. Those are sort of early wins in the first few weeks to a month or so for most people. Some of the other stuff like weight gain and, muscle mass, those are more long-term and they take a little while to really manifest. Unfortunately, most of us, I know for me, we procrastinate a bit and we let things kind of get going before we decide to seek treatment. And so you may have been putting on menopause weight for years and it's going to take a while to get that back off. First, we've got to get the metabolic changes that these hormones do, and that takes a while. And then once that starts, we slow down the weight gain, then we get to not gaining weight, and then finally we get to losing weight. And that's a process and it takes time. And it's frustrating because, we all want it now. I know I do. But it's one of those things that you got to stick with it. And then other things are sort of in between. And sometimes it's unpredictable as well. Sometimes they'll lose weight right away, and then their hot flashes aren't better for a couple of months. So everybody's a little bit different, but generally that's the pattern that we most often see.
What we're hearing from some women is that they didn't even know that things that were happening to them were related to menopause until they started taking hormone replacement therapy. So one thing that doesn't get talked very much about is the vaginal changes. And I know my girlfriends and we laugh about not being able to laugh, because then the incontinence, you pee yourself when you laugh too hard, or you lift a heavy item, you pee yourself. Lord knows you don't want to sneeze. And so that problem, most women just think, well, it's because I'm getting older, but actually it's related to the drop in your hormones. And so we're hearing back from some women that are saying, I didn't know vaginal changes were a part of all of this milieu of everything that's going on. And so you might have things that are happening that you haven't even identified as maybe being able to take care of it with HRT. So for some women, it's been really exciting.
That's one of the reasons that lab tests aren't very helpful. Clearly, Esmeralda, you're suffering, and your symptoms sound like a hormone issue. The hormones start dropping pretty earlier than you would expect, sometimes mid-30s, and start manifesting at your age. And even when your hormone levels are still technically normal on the lab tests, your body doesn't feel that way and wants your hormones back to their normal youthful levels. And so that can really help you. And I guess you had some exposure to estrogen and you felt the difference. This can help with those symptoms. Success rate, about 80% of women at 3 months are satisfied with the results of the hormone therapy. And again, sometimes we need to adjust the dose a little bit to get you there. But the success rate's pretty good. It's not 100%. It's pretty high. And, we have a lot of patients that are very happy and very grateful for the medications. And it feels good to be able to help people. Here's the thing with the pellets. Pellets work, but there are issues with them. First of all, you've got to go to the doctor's office and you've got to get an invasive procedure where they put a big needle in and inject the pellets into you. So that's kind of a bummer. And then if you have side effects or you have problems or you decide you don't like them, you're basically stuck with the pellets until they wear off. And so those are both downsides. The other thing is that my understanding is the pellets are pretty expensive. So with the hormone cream or the pills or the patch, we deal with this at your home over the internet, diagnose you, get you your prescription. It shows up in your mailbox and you start using it. It doesn't hurt. Nobody's going to put needles in you. you just use it. It's simple. And for most people, it works great. Occasionally we have people that have side effects and it doesn't. And in those people, it's not working right, or they decide they don't like it, they just stop it and they're done. You don't have to wait 3 months or 4 months for hormones to wear off. So honestly, I don't really understand the draw of the pellets. Obviously, it's a pretty big industry, so people seem to like them. But to me, if I could take a pill or put some cream on me or a patch, instead of having someone inject something into my body with a big needle, I'd go the easy way. The pellets work, but so does the cream and the patch and the pills. So why do something invasive when you don't have to? Ovaries aren't producing enough hormones, particularly estrogen for hot flashes usually, and needs to be replaced. Hormones take a little while to sort of work up a blood level and really become effective. So it says you say you've been on it for about a week. I would guess in the next couple of weeks, you're going to start feeling some relief from those nighttime hot flashes. If your hot flashes are at night, I recommend taking the medicine at night. I generally do anyway, because if you're also on progesterone, that helps with the sleep. Every now and then, somebody goes backwards. It's kind of funny. I just had somebody I was talking to today where instead of the progesterone making them sleepy, it activated them like caffeine. I'm like, okay, switch to the morning. But for most people, it makes them sleepy. And so on top of that, you get the double whammy of helping you sleep, plus the estrogen helping the hot flashes. So the bottom line is that the estrogen is too low, and it's more than that really. While you're in perimenopause, the ovaries are still spurting out a little bit, and so you get these inconsistent up and downs of your hormones. We really think that's probably what causes the hot flashes, more on top of just the low levels. It's the levels and then these just little peaks of changes in the estrogen. It's the same reason people sometimes get hot flashes in pregnancy. And it's why hot flashes do tend to go away sometime after menopause when things are more stable. Basically, there's no hormone, but that's probably why you're having hot flashes. Hormone replacement therapy is going to level everything out. It's going to bring your hormones back to where they're supposed to be without these big spikes, and should keep your body from reacting that way. So our products depend on your needs and your individual situation. Testosterone is a controlled substance. And so in order to prescribe testosterone legally, you have to have an in-person visit. There's some exceptions because of COVID, but we're planning on being around for a long time. Those exceptions are going to go away. So we use a product called DHEA, which is a naturally occurring hormone in your body, but we don't use it for the DHEA. What happens to DHEA, within 30 minutes of taking it, it's broken down into estrogen and testosterone. And we found that it's a nice way of increasing testosterone levels without really worrying about overshooting. Testosterone can have a lot of side effects if there's too much on board. And, certainly we don't want to overshoot. The DHEA will get you to a nice, normal, healthy level, but won't go beyond that at the doses we prescribe. Now, some people have looked up DHEA and have gotten afraid of it because of all these side effects they see on the internet. And the thing about DHEA is that the bodybuilding community uses it in really massive doses, 10 to 20 times the dose that we use at Winona. And in those giant doses, yeah, it can cause problems. But in a normal dose that we would use, it's really extremely rare to see those kind of side effects.
One of the reasons that we provide the DHEA to elevate testosterone is a lot of women don't think of testosterone as being a female hormone, and they're afraid of it because they don't want to get a beard or look like the bodybuilders that Mike was referring to. And what we know about testosterone in women is that you'll get about a 50% decrease in your testosterone levels from the age of 20 to the age of 40. So you'll have half of the amount of testosterone that you had at 40 than you had at 20. And the problem with that is that testosterone is one of the key components of having appropriate levels of lean body mass. And so that's your muscle. And your muscle is always twitching. And so when it's always twitching, it is creating a burn like a furnace. And if you have more lean muscle mass, your furnace will burn hotter and you'll have a higher metabolic rate. And so I hear from women all the time, and I experienced this myself. My go-to exercise when I was in my 20s was running. and I would go for a run at a certain pace for a certain period of time, and I could maintain my weight. And then when I hit 45, 48, all of a sudden those things that worked for me didn't work anymore. And I couldn't figure it out because I was at a similar pace, not quite as fast, but I was running a little further actually. So why was I still gaining this weight? And what I realized was that I kind of had these thinner legs and more of a belly, and my fat was getting redistributed to my belly. My lean muscle mass, that was my nice, shapely, muscular legs, was sort of the little old lady skinny legs. And so I had this lower metabolic rate, even though I was trying so hard to exercise. So I needed to increase the testosterone so I could get some of those muscles back so that I could increase my metabolic rate. The other thing that happens when we age is that because of our hormones getting thrown off, the estrogen, the progesterone, and the testosterone, all these other hormones get thrown off that regulate our, whether we're hungry, whether we feel full, and whether or not we feel stressed. And with increased stress, we not only eat more, we sleep less, and which makes us eat more. And so there's just this whole interplay of all of these hormones.
So one of the questions that we'll ask in the onboarding is, are you on HRT? And if you are, what are you currently on? And then we ask if you're satisfied with that. And so I can look at that and get an idea, okay, this is what you're on and it's working or it's not working. If it is working, I can match it so that we keep it working for you. If it's not working, then I can look at what you're on and what's not working about it and basically build a better hormone replacement routine for you to get it working. So absolutely, we're happy to do that. And we have some people transfer, they're happy with what they're on, but they want the convenience of not having to go to the pharmacy and go to the doctor's office. And we're happy to take over that. Other people are on HRT and it's not working for them. And I'm happy to tackle that and get you on something that's going to relieve your symptoms. 100%, that's time to start it. Changes that happen to your body even before your periods stop, like osteoporosis and the cardiovascular risks, that HRT addresses. So not only is it helping your symptoms, but it's also preventive medicine to keep you from having problems down the road. So most women have symptoms of perimenopause while their periods are still happening. And so most of our patients honestly are still menstruating, are still having periods. And HRT is still extremely appropriate during that time.
The estrogen has everything to do with collagen in your skin. And also, if you've noticed, your hair maybe is changing too. So the brittleness of your hair, the dryness of your skin. And so when you have depleted estrogen and progesterone, you're going to start to notice that the skin is getting really wrinkly and dry. And so getting those levels back to normal is definitely going to help. The painful sex is going to be due to all three of those hormones, the estrogen, the progesterone, and the testosterone. And partially the testosterone is because your female parts are almost like a sling where the muscles have to be maintained and in proper condition in order to work effectively. The estrogen, when it goes down, the vaginal tissues get thin and dry and can easily be torn, which can cause some real problems during sex. And so, Mike, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Yeah, so two things. So to add on to that, the testosterone does help with the muscles. Estrogen will also help with the vaginal tissues to help thicken them. They also work on the glands and increase your normal vaginal discharge, what's supposed to be there, your lubrication for intercourse. So the hormone replacement will help the vaginal symptoms. For people whose vaginal symptoms are really bad, there is an estrogen vaginal cream that we can give in addition, and that tends to work a lot more quickly, and it's locally right where you need it, and so it tends to work a little bit better. But the body cream and the pills and the patch also will help the vaginal symptoms. It just takes a little bit longer for relief, so it sort of depends on how bad they are. And then I just want to tell a story about the skin. My wife doesn't have hot flashes or moodiness, but she started the Winona creams, and she loves what it's doing for her skin. She was a little frustrated because she kept saying, where's the weight loss, where's the weight loss? And right about the 3-month mark, all of a sudden she started losing weight. She's like, I'm losing weight. And so she was very, very careful to let me know before she ran out, hey, I need more of this stuff. because she really likes what it's doing for her skin and what it's doing for her physique. So anyway, another Winona success story. So the average amount of time is 5 years, but it's really variable. And so there are some women that really don't need it that long, and you just got to get them through a little bump in the road. And there are other women that are going to need it for the rest of their lives. It really depends on your symptoms and how the symptoms are being treated by the hormone replacement therapy. So it's generally safe to be on as long as you need it for symptom management. Then again, if it's no longer needed, then there's no point using medicine that you don't need. So again, the average is about 5 years. Some people less, some people more, depending on how your body tends to respond.
And I can say I'm probably going to stay on it for quite a few years. My hot flashes were absolutely overwhelming. And there are women that have hot flashes for the rest of their lives. And it's not an issue of just sweating in front of other people. It just was, I was just so uncomfortable. And when I got on HRT, I felt balanced again. I felt good again. And I'm almost afraid to go back to that hormone depleted state. So I'll probably always stay on it. Not saying that I'm recommending that. I'm just saying that's what I'm choosing.
For women that have a uterus, if you have not had a hysterectomy, estrogen always has to be given with progesterone. And the reason is that estrogen by itself will stimulate the lining of the uterus called the endometrium. And if it's not balanced with progesterone, can lead to uterine cancer. When we give it with progesterone, it does the exact opposite, and it balances out that lining. And women that are on estrogen and progesterone actually have a lower risk of uterine cancer than women that aren't on any medicine at all. So if you still have your uterus, we'll always give you progesterone with your estrogen. If you have had a hysterectomy and you don't have a uterus, you don't have to have progesterone. Then it becomes optional depending on your symptoms. The progesterone can still be helpful for some women. For some women, they don't need it. So again, we individualize the treatment depending on your symptoms and your unique situation. So it may be a mixture or maybe just one. And occasionally we have some people that just want the progesterone, and that's okay too. And for some people that ends up being enough. The 80% of women are satisfied with their symptom relief at 3 months. And if not, we can increase the dosage or sometimes change the ratios to get you where you need to be. But there's every reason to believe that we can get you feeling, back to your young self again.
While hot flashes and night sweats typically always get better post-menopause, the vaginal symptoms will get worse if not treated. And Mike, you can tell this better than I because you've probably seen it in the office, but there are women who their parts actually fall out of their body because it just gets worse and worse and worse. So Mike, maybe you can elaborate on that.
That's a problem for some women. I mean, it's a big problem. And at that point, it usually needs to be corrected with surgery or with something called a pessary. You don't obviously want to let it get there. But yeah, some of the symptoms like the hot flashes, the night sweats get better. Some of them get worse. So it sort of depends on the symptoms that we're talking about. The vaginal symptoms in particular tend to get worse over time. And skin as well, continue to get benefit from that after menopause.
Menopause, like puberty, is going to happen. It's a natural evolution of your body. But when the hormones are, like Mike said earlier, erratically going up and then steeply down and then back up again, you have all of these symptoms. And then when they plummet too low, you have symptoms that can lead to long-term health problems like heart disease, type 2 diabetes with the weight gain, and all sorts of other things. So we wanted to address this idea that menopause is a disease. It's not a disease. It's a part of your life. What is problematic are the symptoms that come with it. And then the other thing I think that we wanted to point out with this question was that people went to extremes to try and relieve these symptoms. And it's really scary. We're going to have some other questions about this further down. I'm excited by the prospect of being able to provide humane, appropriate, safe, and effective solutions to the menopause symptoms that all of us are suffering from. And it has nothing to do with a leech or bleeding or cupping. because of the mental instability that happens with the brain fog, the cloudiness, the sort of erratic moods, women were seen as being unstable. And so they were institutionalized in insane asylums regularly. And so thankfully, we're not at that place now, but we shouldn't ignore the fact that we are having significant changes in our mood. One of the problems is that women are also in a phase of their life where a lot of other things are happening. So right now I'm living in a sandwich generation. I'm taking care of my mom, who's quite elderly, and then I've got my kids, and I'm somewhere in the middle. So that's a big stressor for me. I also am at probably the most critical phase of my career, and I can't afford to be foggy in my brain. And a couple of my boys have gone off to college, and that's been really hard for me, the empty nest syndrome. So this accumulation of all of these things has made my life really challenging. And then I have the hormone depletion. So that was part of why I needed to get back to normal levels of hormones. The rate of women committing suicide is highest during their peri and their menopausal years. And that number is extraordinarily high compared to any other phase of their lives. And so that number to me signifies that we're not properly addressing this issue of the emotional changes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're mostly not putting people in asylums anymore, but unfortunately, they're still being marginalized. We have a great treatment, but there's all this scare stuff out there that are keeping women from getting the treatment they need to feel better.
It's all of them, believe it or not, even golf. And so people were truly desperate to find some solution to this problem. The juice of guinea pig ovaries was actually an effort to try and extract the hormones that we're giving today. That's absurd the way they did it, but they're trying to get to a hormone replacement therapy, right?
I mean, could you imagine, using pregnant horse urine?
Yeah, exactly.
So for those of you who don't know, Premarin is a brand name for a commonly used hormone replacement therapy that comes from pregnant mare urine, Premarin, which we don't use. Sort of like the guinea pig ovaries there. At least that one makes sense.
And Premarin was what was used in the Women's Health Initiative exclusively. Correct. So that's not used anymore. Believe it or not, all of those things, so electric therapy, opium, we were talking about orgasm, where they actually had doctors that would manually manipulate women to make them have orgasms, to make them feel better with menopause. And then that made one of the doctors create a vibrator because he got tired of doing it.
His hand was cramping. So we gotta find a better way.
The answer, which was never a treatment for menopause, was fen-phen. So fen-phen was a very popular weight loss medication that caused heart valve problems and had to be taken off the market by the FDA very, very quickly. It's a common name, so we threw it in there thinking that maybe we could trick you, but we didn't. And as you can see, all of these other ones are an effort to try and get to those hormones that we're trying to replace, with the exception of the vibrator. Yeah. If you look at a textbook, and as you know, I was a professor. So if you look at a textbook, the answer is going to be estrogen, just estrogen. They're not going to include progesterone and testosterone. After our conversation today, we know that is not true. We know that is the combination of the three that has the full impact of your perimenopause and your menopausal symptoms. So you guys all got it right. But if you go and you Google it, please don't email me and tell me I got it wrong.
So this is something actually I talk to medical students and residents about. And that is, sometimes the right answer on the test is not the right answer in real life. And that's where the art of medicine comes. It's like, well, that's the right answer on the test, but that's not the right thing for my patient. And so in this case, this is one of those ones where if I was taking an exam, I'd hold my nose and I'd put estrogen, knowing that that's wrong, but I know that that's what they're looking for. But the right answer in real life is all of the above. It's a compounded cream that we make, that our pharmacists make. It basically is the active ingredient in Viagra, but put in a cream form. And so just like men use Viagra by taking it a half an hour before sex, a woman would use the Blossom cream by putting it on her clitoris and surrounding tissues a half an hour before anticipated sex. And just like Viagra increases blood flow to allow an erection, this increases blood flow to the clitoris and surrounding areas, which increases stimulation and also makes orgasm easier to achieve and more intense. So we've had some real good success for patients like this. It does help. There's a chance for you to try it at 50% off, and it'll be a product that will be good for you.